Hi, good afternoon, everyone. You are live with Battling Bad Brokers and Unpaid Freight Invoices. You have John Cantera with the NOAA Fraud Prevention Program. We have Caitlin is on here for NOAA Dispatching Division. She's taking a phone call at the moment. And of course, myself, Head of Corporate Debt Collections. Today, we've got a couple of topics that we want to discuss to help you in your endeavors. And some of these things that we may talk about may not be per se battling bad brokers or against the unpaid invoice, but how to prevent getting involved with those situations or getting a freight guard put on you or what have you. So I myself want to address a client. It was a non-NOAA client. Hopefully he's going to be a NOAA client this week as we continued our discussions. But it was a non-NOAA client that came to me and he said, "Hey, can you help me?" And I've worked with this carrier several times, well, 2 or 3 times in the last year and a half, with unpaid freight invoices that he's had, and helping get resolution. And he says, "Look, I've got this broker that's about to put a freight guard on me. Can you help me?" And I said, "Well, what happened?" And he says, "My dispatcher unknowingly irritated him, made him mad, and they're talking about a freight guard." So I got the details from him, and then I called the broker. Okay, because that's what I do. I want to find out what the broker side of things are, so that I have both sides, so that I know where I have to start with this negotiation and figure out what's happened. So I call up the broker, and the broker says, "Yep, they called." And he says, "I don't put all the details of my load on the load board. You have to call and ask about it. Then I give you the rest of the details." So I provided them the rest of the details. They said they'd like to take it. I vetted them. They did their carry packet. We hired them. And he says, and that was like at 9:30, 10 o'clock this morning. He says, and it's first come, first serve till 2 o'clock. When the facility closes at 2 o'clock. And so the day is going on, and they were getting unloaded in Houston. The pickup was like 11 miles away at Pasadena or something close by. Sort of the P. Sorry, my bad if I misspoke, but it was close. Of course, 11 miles in Houston might take a long time to go, just depending on where you are. But but anyways, he says the day went on, and I checked in periodically, like how are we coming. They kept saying he's unloading, he's unloading, he's unloading, and I was like, damn, he's been unloading for like 4 or 5 hours, like. And now we're down to like an hour and a half, 2 hours before the facility closes, and they're still not headed there. They're still unloading. He said, "Now the first issue I have is this was a dispatcher I was speaking to, but they were using the owner's signature on an email. So they were using the owner's email address with the owner's signature on it, to send out communications." And he said, "So I thought I was communicating with the owner of this company, and I'm thinking this owner doesn't really care. They're not giving me good information, and I find out that that's really the dispatcher." He says, and then I asked him for updates like where they were at, and they kept saying they're unloading, but they didn't mention it was a multi-stop drop. And I asked them, they had a reefer and we needed it dry, clean and dry. And I asked them if it was going to be dry. They said, yeah, it would be dry. But I asked what they were unloading, what they were currently under load with, and they wouldn't tell me. So I didn't know if they had frozen product that I was going to have to worry about a wet trailer. Also, we haul a lot of government loads, and I'm not going to lose my government contract. So it gets down to this hour and a half, and hour and a half to 2 hours rather. And I'm thinking I need to start reworking this load because this carrier is just, continually blowing sunshine at me, and I don't know if they're really going to be there. It's the first time I've worked with them. And so I mentioned putting a freight guard up for unethical business practices because I wasn't getting any updates. I wasn't getting any information. I wasn't. And then the owner says, "Oh, this is the owner." Da, 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 da. And I was like, "I thought I was communicating with the owner the whole time." And he said, "So now I'm going. Now what's really going on?" Now all of a sudden the owner's like, "Yeah, this is the owner trying to talk to me about this." And he says, It's a brand new carrier I've never worked with. It's not feeling right to me. There's feeling like something's just feeling off to me." And he says, "So, just like you guys want to hold brokers accountable for everything that everything we communicate and how we talk to carriers, whatever, I felt that it's necessary to warn other brokers that this person might not communicate with them and might leave them high and dry when they're getting close to a pickup on a load, and that I had to rework my load." He goes, "But I also told the carrier I'm going to have to rework this, but you need to let me know when your driver gets empty, so that and is headed on their way." He says, "Now, I did get it covered, thankfully." He says, "I did have to pay more to get it covered." Well, he also added in bribery too, because he said that the carrier was trying to bribe him not to put the freight guard up. Okay, this is a twofold thing. With the bribery thing, let me start with the bribery and work backwards. Okay, I'm a customer service person. And for the longest, when I grew up in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, if you went to a restaurant and they didn't do your food right, they would offer to make you new food. Are they bribing you? No, they're trying to right a wrong. They're trying to keep you as a customer and keep you happy. So, if you went somewhere and you bought something and they shorted you, the next time they might give you an extra one or something to keep you happy as a customer. So when somebody says, "Hey, what do I need to do to make this right with you? Do I need to compensate you?" Like they're saying, if you have to come out of pocket extra money to cover me because I let you down, I want to make this right with you so that because you had to save face with your customer. I understand. So
Can I
go ahead, John.
share an example of that?
Yes. Yes.
A great example of that are people who end up getting freight guards for canceling a load uh, with no time left for the broker to recover. Okay, I see a lot of freight cards for that, and a lot of those can be resolved very easily by offering some kind of conciliatory action toward the broker. I don't know how many times I've been able to use a reverse TONU as a tactic in trying to help get some freight guards removed. You know, because if you haven't cost the broker their customer, which sometimes does happen, in which case you're completely screwed. But if you haven't cost the broker their customer, then compensation is still in order. And you're absolutely right. It's not a bribe. It's actually an acceptable way of doing business because let's face it, carriers, you expect the brokers to compensate you when they do something wrong. Okay, you expect that tone you expect that layover, you expect that detention. Now, if you do something which is basically the same thing but on the other side of the table, is it not reasonable to assume that to get yourself out of the situation that you make that offer as a suggestion to try to help compensate the broker for what they've gone
But
through.
this is the second time I've had a broker tell me that this is bribery. So I had to explain to him. I said, I'm not seeing that as bribery. I'm looking at that as a, if you feel that you need to go ahead and rework the load and put somebody on it, if it costs you more money, and that's why you're freight guarding me because I had to cancel at the last minute, or you think I fell off the load, even though they weren't given the opportunity to go pick the load up and have an issue, the broker was being proactive, which I applaud. So I mean, I got to give props to both sides here. Like I know you're getting down to crunch time, but you haven't been given correct updates all day, so you got to do what you got to do to save your customer in your lane. So go ahead and get it covered. But if that load now costs him $1,000 more, or $500 more, or $200 more, because he had to get a carrier at the last minute to go get that load for him to save his customer, then offering some reconciliation, like John is saying, I don't look at that as bribery. I look at that as making good customer service. Making it right on the customer service side of things, providing
At
good
the end of the
customer.
day, it's a business, and business is all about relationships. And
Mhm.
as long as you are satisfying your business relationships, it's a good thing. And brokers, I like to think most brokers out there will understand this. Most brokers out there would appreciate this kind of approach. Of
I
course,
think that it's
we
just
all
such a
know
new it's such a
not
new
all brokers are
concept
good.
that's why they don't necessarily recognize it as a customer service approach. They're looking at it as a tactic to keep out of trouble. And since this is kind of a new thing that's come about, this again, like I said, is the second time I've had a broker call it bribery. And I'm like, I no, this is offering a good token of good faith, saying, I'm sorry if you feel like I cost you this, but let me make this part right with you. Let me make it so it doesn't cost you more out of your pocket. And it's not a bribery thing; it's a customer service thing. So that's the first point I want to make. So he says now they try to bribe me not to put the freight guard up by offering me this money, and I was like, no, that was a customer service thing. Now working backwards, first thing I want to say is when I called this broker, he was very calm, and it was just like, I don't know this guy money, and I was like, no, no, that's not it. Here's the situation. And I said, but I don't. I wanted to know what happened from your perspective because sometimes Whether you're right or wrong is a perception thing. It's how who saw it from what side. And so I want to get both sides of the story so that I'm not, coming in like a bull in a china cabinet, touting something that I really don't know anything about, and I find out that the carrier has tried to paint themselves in the best light, and come to find out there's a little more to the story that maybe I just didn't know. Okay, so it's knowledge is power. So I could hear from this broker that he is so passionate about doing things the right way and following this process. And wouldn't don't you- look, this has happened, and wouldn't you think this at this point? Yep, you're right on point with that. You're right on point with that. There was nothing I could say that you're like, whoa, that's um totally out of the ordinary expectation for a broker to want to know this information or to need this update. So there was nothing in there that really spoke out to me about it. But what he did say was, I said, well, I don't know about this dispatcher that this carrier has. I've not known him to use a dispatcher in the past, so I need to ask him. Maybe that's something new. And he's like, okay, again, if he just hired a dispatcher, why would you turn your whole office and process over to somebody that's new and let them blindly lead, out there? And I said, well, you're right. I said, but maybe he just didn't know. I said, so this is something I need to dig into further with him. And then I informed this broker that, I work with you guys to give you the best practices and procedures for things. It's an education thing. We try to make people better business partners. And I said to the broker, just like you and I said to him, I said, we're both detail people. We both take very good notes of the details, and maybe and not everybody is a detail person, so I don't want to hold everybody's feet to the fire on that. Not every single person can be a detail person, but we might need to let them know things that they need to keep in mind when they are giving information so that they can give the best information possible. And so the thing I'm going to tell that you guys as carriers out there is over communicate. Okay, how many times are these brokers calling you, asking you where you at, where you at, where you at, where you at? Beat them to the punch. Call them first. Hey, this is where we're at. Hey, we're still loading here. We got three more stops, but we're working our way that way. We're gonna be there at this time. We're gonna make it. That let reassure them. Don't make them search for you, because that makes them nervous and apprehensive, and they're going, oh my God, where's my truck? Where's my truck? Are they gonna? Because like he said, well, if I don't have a truck show up, it might cost me this customer, and this customer might not be a one lane customer. They might be, I might have 6 lanes with them. So you could be costing me, 10 loads, 20 loads a week over something if it's a big customer. And he says that I deal with a lot of government loads, and I can't have my government contract, you know, be taken away from me because I didn't make sure I had a carrier where they were supposed to be at a certain time. So I respect all of that. And by the same token, you gotta over communicate to them so that they know that you're coming, that you're still on point, that you are well aware of where your driver is. They wanna know that you have hands on your driver and that you have forgotten about your driver, and they're not just lollygagging around a McDonald's somewhere and haven't gone where they're supposed to go. So anyway, so the broker tells the carrier, "Hey, when your driver gets unloaded, let me know, but I've got to rework the load for now." Okay. And now it gets to be after that 2 o'clock time. I'm talking to this broker. He says, it's now 3:30. I still haven't heard from this carrier that their driver ever got unloaded. He said, fortunately, I did get the load covered. Yeah, it did cost me a little bit more, but they never called me to see if got it covered, if I was okay. Did I need them still? He says, and I still don't know to this minute if they're unloaded. And I said, that is a problem, and I will address that. So meanwhile, back at the ranch, I said, well, he says, I'm not sure why you're calling. And I said, well, they got really nervous when you mentioned you were going to put a freight guard up, and they didn't feel like they had, done anything that was freight guard worthy. And so I'm asking you to consider just keeping them on your do not use list, letting me use this as an opportunity to educate this carrier as well as others. So now I brought it to you guys here on Noah Live, and I'm saying, hey, let's look at what this entails, and making sure that you guys know what to do in the future so that this doesn't happen to you. So I reached back out to the carrier and I said, so a carrier, when did you get this dispatcher? And he was like, 2 days ago. And I was like, okay, so you've gotten to the point where you're at 6 trucks now. Your office is getting big enough now where you need a dispatcher. You might need an accounting team. You might need yada, yada, yada. And because of these things, you need to know what's going on. Okay. I said, you need a domain with your own name. No more of this XYZ trucking at gmail.com, because you're using XYZ Trucking at gmail.com with the signature block of the owner, but you've given it to your dispatcher, and it looks like that it's you that's representing your company, and it's really this dispatcher you hired 2 days ago, and you had a crisis come up and had to leave the office and have left the office unmanned, and now you've got the stranger basically running your company, representing you as the owner and making decisions, and people are going, "What is wrong with this owner?" I was like, it needs to be dispatcher at XYZ Trucking and owner at XYZ Trucking and John at XYZ Trucking. And I said, so that there's no confusion over who they're communicating with. Because then all of a sudden, when they're talking about a freight guard, because they feel like you're kind of being on the edge of shady because they don't know you. This is the first time working with you. That now all of a sudden you come in as the owner. Caitlin, can you mute your mic, please? And if you come in as the owner, and thank you, and you come in as the owner, going, whoa, 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 I'm the owner. And he thinks he's been communicating with you all along. Well, who the heck have I been talking to? Now it really looks bad. And so he's like, oh, and I said, and so how long have you had this dispatcher? He says 2 days. I said, well, today is your dispatcher's last day. Find a new dispatcher. Hire Noah Dispatching Services. Why Noah Dispatching Services, guys? Why would we hire Noah over Dispatching Services over willy nilly Bob Smith dispatcher out there? Well, let me tell you why. Because our carrier dispatching services are vetted, they have to sign a code of ethics. They're reviewed every 90 days by Caitlin herself to see if they're still worthy of the Noah brand. We don't just let any old willy-nilly person, dispatch for us. We want people that know their shit. We want people that know how to communicate with brokers, that can represent themselves professionally, that give good updates. Okay, so these are just things that I am noting that I want to share with you guys as we talk about this. So um so that was one thing, and I said, also, when you do have a dispatcher and you are allowing them to dispatch your loads, it's probably a good idea to sit there with them for a couple of days, a week, a couple of weeks, so that they know what to do in certain situations and when they need to reach out to you. And I said, and what I imagine happened here is this dispatcher was doing along his job, and when the guy says, "Hey, I'm going to put a freight car on you," this dispatcher realizes I'm in hot water, I'm way over my head, and I need help. Calls in the owner for doo, 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 here comes the cavalry to help me out. And now it looks just even worse because what you've communicated is not really, what's happened here. And I said, what were you delivering? And he said, we were delivering plants, which is often a multi-stop thing. Sometimes they have 10 stops in a day to deliver these plants at Home Depots or wherever, Menards or whatever, across the region right there. And if they would have told him that up front, he would have known, hey, he's going to be later coming in there. That's what we're expecting. It's going to be tight, but yeah, we're going to make it in there. I asked the carrier, were you unloaded in time? Oh, yeah, we were unloaded in time to pick it up. I said, why haven't you communicated that to the broker to make sure he got that load covered? Why didn't you follow back up with him to make sure he didn't need you? He says, I see where you're going with all this. So after reiterating that with this carrier and going out to discuss this with him, and he saw very much the valid points that this broker had. And I said, and so by the same token that we want to hold our brokers accountable for the situations and the updates and the information that they present, this broker wants to make sure that this carrier that he can announce carriers that are also might be potentially harmful to other brokers. So which is fair. And so he says, but then when I go to put a freight guard on him, he calls you guys up and you guys come in and talk about, well, hey, I don't, don't put a freight guard on this guy or whatever. Well, okay. He says, so I look like the bad guy or whatever if I put a freight guard. And I said, well, I understand where you're coming from. I'm just asking you that this could be a consideration that we use this as a teaching tool. So I'm pulling my end of the bargain on this and use it as a teaching tool. I have not gotten any word back that any freight guard was put up um, on this carrier yet. So I'm hoping that the emotions have calmed down and that everybody's just said, okay, I'm going to let this one go. But being mindful as you're growing your businesses, when you get to that point that you need a dedicated dispatcher, you need a dedicated accounting person, and you need a dedicated whatever, whatever, that you have people in place that are going to represent you in the best possible light. Make sure that they know not to wait until it gets to a freight guard situation for them to pull you into it. Make sure that you're over communicating where your trucks are, when they're going to be there. Beat the don't make the brokers beat you up, but beat the brokers up. Blow up their phone instead. It's always better for you to do that than to feel like you're chasing your tail. Oh, let me find out and I'll get back to you. That makes it sound like you're not on top of your trucks. You need to be in front of your trucks and giving that information. I mean, I'm sure if you talk to John and Caitlin, they're going to tell you that they reach out to their brokers far and away more times than their brokers reach out to them because they are on top of their trucks. They know where they are. If there's an issue, those brokers know before they even have to reach out to John and Caitlin that there's an issue or that they might be late or that hey something's come up or hey we're on time or we're going to be early. um, so just that's what I wanted to reiterate here is the over communication and the expectation that if you want to have the respect for carriers given by brokers, then we have to respect the broker's jobs just the same as the intermediary and try to help them their job be as smooth as possible. Because I can guarantee you, as a broker, if I have carriers that are updating me and I'm not having to chase them down, then I'm going to keep using those carriers because I know I don't have to continually chase. I don't have to continually call. I'm not going to be caught off guard at the last minute going, oh my gosh. Okay, because you're already going to be updating me. So you're somebody I want to work with all the time. So that's why I just wanted to say, put yourself, walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. Think about how can I make this easier on my counterparts so that they want to continue to use me so that I'm a good and viable solution for their loads. So that I'm not thought of as a worrisome carrier that oh my gosh they always wait till the last minute to get there and it scares me to death because I don't ever know if they're going to make it and what have you. So that's my story for today is just be mindful, put yourself in other people's shoes and be professional. Over communicate. If you're growing your business, make sure you have your own domain name. Make sure you have separate email addresses, if nothing else, for your people, so that you're not being misrepresented and as the owner when you're not the owner, or vice versa. John, anything you want to add to my story that will help out here?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot of good information you gave out here, but a couple things that I would foot stomp on is the over communication piece. Anyone who's ever been to my website and has read my guide on dealing with fraud in the industry,
I've read it,
you're
annotated it,
going.
corrected it, and sent
You
it.
have, you have. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think the next version is going to have a forward written by Jennifer. But one of the key things that I point out in there in trying to identify potential scammers is the level of updates they're constantly requesting. And there's a reason for that. They develop trust with the brokers by providing these constant, and I do mean constant updates. And that's why brokers continue to use them and will use them several times before they're finally discovered as being a double broker. It's about the trust factor. And the more information you provide to a care or to a broker while you're in the process of dealing with one of their loads, then the more they will trust you. And that's what you need to develop is that trust. Just because you did a load for them 5 months ago, that doesn't mean anything. You need to communicate regularly. And anyone who's been in this business for any length of time knows you're only as good as the last load you did. So by all means, communicate regularly. Every few hours, you should be talking to them. As soon as you're about to drop off a previous load and you're about to go make your way towards their load, say, hey, I'm at my delivery location now. I should be unloaded in the next 30 minutes or so. My ETA to your pickup is going to be this time. I'll let you know if there are any changes. By the way, the weather here is horrific, so you might get a minor delay. And let me tell you something, I've been saying that line all day today. All you people who are stuck up in the Ohio Valley and Midwest,
And
whoa.
Mississippi. Mississippi has six
well,
inches of snow.
Yes, I mean, holy cow! I've had two carriers that are currently stuck in Chicago because they're fuel gelled. And it's so cold that the anti-gel is just not effective. You got to wrap the tank, you got to put heat to it to get the fuel to liquefy again, so you can actually start the truck. And it's been a nightmare today up in the way up north, but it's not. It's bad as well in the south. I know those of you who don't know. I live in Pensacola, Florida. Okay, usually it's beautiful out here. It is paradise, and I love it. Um, Tonight's low is going to be 19 degrees, thankfully above zero. So people here are freaking out about wrapping your pipes, and because we don't have insulated pipes down here. So it's going to be interesting for the next few days. But that communication is what's extremely important. The other thing I want to foot stomp is the dispatch vetting. Anytime you do expand, as Jen mentioned, you want to make sure that you're utilizing business partners that are going to further your business. Interviewing them, getting credentials from them, getting references are all very important things you should be doing. Picking the first dispatcher that calls you that day to offer dispatch services is usually not a good idea, especially since the dispatchers who are constantly calling are the dispatchers you typically don't want to work with.
All
NOAA
the more reason to
dispatchers
use NOAA dispatching
never
services.
call you. NOAA dispatchers will never call you because we get our leads usually by word of mouth or some other reputable source, and therefore we don't have to do cold calls all the time to try to find clients. I know I am always swamped with trucks because of the work that we do and how we do it. And I love Noah's code of ethics. I love how we're evaluated on the code of ethics every 90 days. I love how we're evaluated on how much we adhere to FMCSA rules that were recently published about dispatch services. And these are important, even though they're not being enforced right now by FMCSA. And FMCSA has been very open about the fact that they don't enforce these rules on these dispatch services. It's about image. It's about representing your company in a positive light. If there's going to be a NOAA logo on your dispatcher signature block, then you can guarantee that they're going to do what's best for your business because that is what we train them to do. And every single dispatcher who works with NOAA has been behind the wheel. Every single dispatcher has been with NOAA. They know what this industry is like. They know how to deal with brokers. And I don't think there is a single dispatcher on our roster who has ever had a carrier that got a freight card. Ever. I mean, there's the that's a great thing right there. I mean, our job, at least the way I view my job.
I'd be interested to know that. Caitlin, are you there? Are you still on the phone? Are you back? I know you've been
I
having.
think she's still on the phone.
I want to know. I would.
I'm not on the phone.
Yeah, do we have
Oh,
any of our NOAA dispatchers ever had a carrier that received a freight
uh, Jen, we can barely hear you. Cutting
card?
out.
My bad. I got it. Sorry, I didn't. My mic was moved. Have we ever had a dispatcher? Since we started our NOAA dispatching services, that have had a carrier that has gotten a freight card since they've been part of NOAA.
I honestly do not know the answer to that. I don't. I mean, not that I'm aware of. None of them have ever come to me and said, "Hey, my carrier got a freight card for this reason or whatever." So
I know we would have
I'm aware
custom
of.
discussed it if freight card was ever discovered in one of your audits.
If you have the opportunity when you do your next review with each of them or whatever, ask them, make that part of your review. Do you have any carriers that have gotten a freight guard? Because I'd be interested to know if we have one or have any that have gotten any. Because number one, we need to be working with them to find out why they got the freight guard. Is it something we could have done better as an organization, or is it just purely something the carrier messed up on or whatever. And plus I think that's a good statistic to be able to reputably put out there to people is how many freight guards that we haven't gotten.
Yeah, I can find out.
Hmm.
I can help you right now. None for me.
None for me either.
So, in fact, I prevented quite a few.
I don't think I've ever had a carrier that got a freight guard thrown on them while I've been working with them.
Correct. Yeah. Actually, some of my customers have come to me because they've had freight guards, and I've gotten them removed and helped guided their business, and that's what got me into being their dispatcher.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been very rewarding. in my eyes, anyway. Um, but yeah, I think those are my biggest comments on your case there, Jen. You got anything on to add to that, Kate?
No, nope.
We pretty much dissected that one, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I've got a couple things I want to kick up. We talked about a little bit about freight guards here, and I was actually working a freight guard over the weekend, and just because you guys may be sitting back and chilling on the weekend, or in your rest periods and whatnot, yeah, fraud doesn't rest. So most of the time, we don't either. I was working over the weekend on a freight guard for a carrier who was getting hit for an unresolved claim. One of the things that really drives me insane about Carrier 411 is the amount of power that a broker has in utilizing that tool, and how there are brokers out there who abuse that tool in order to coerce, force, blackmail, whatever term you want to use, a carrier into doing their bidding. And Jen and I quickly talked about this before the show, so I'm happy for her to chime in as we go through this. This particular carrier had a issue with a cargo. Apparently, when they did the pickup, a 40-pound box fell off the top of the cargo. It was on a flatbed. No visible damage. The shipper picked it up, put it back up on the truck. Everything was secured. It went. The load was delivered. It was delivered with a clean BOL. Everything was all well and good. 3 months later, a claim comes in saying that one of the pieces in that load was damaged. Okay, well, fair enough. Show me the money. Show me the pictures of the damage, et cetera, et cetera. The only thing the carrier got were receipts and a claim for decent amount of money. It wasn't too terribly bad. I've seen a lot of reefer claims at 70, 50, $60,000. This is considerably less, but a claim's still a claim, and you still got to deal with it. It went to the carrier's insurance company. Insurance said no, the carrier's not liable because it was a clean BOL. Okay, in a court of law, you're certainly right. That's probably what the outcome's going to be in front of a judge. But who the hell wants to go and have to fight this in a court of law just to hear that from a judge? And that's too damn expensive to have to deal with. But what this broker did was they didn't like the insurance company's answer, so they filed a freight guard for an unresolved freight claim. And this basically forces the carrier to respond outside of typical claim structure in order to try to save themselves and save their business. So they reached out to me, and that has been the approach that we're going with. I'm currently conducting an investigation on the load into what happened, and I have convinced the broker to remove the freight guard, at least temporarily, while we go through this investigation, and then determine what the level of liability happens to be. Now, there's a lot of different questions in the liability side, and that stems from did the broker get a claim from their customer and just pay it outright in order to salvage their relationship, which is basically a business decision. And do they then expect the carrier to refund their business decision? I personally take some exception to that, but since no one has any definitive answers in this particular case so far, and mind you, we have just started investigating this. I don't even have the documentation from either side yet. Since we're still investigating this, if it turns out that there's a he said, she said situation and it can't be proved either way, then perhaps there might be a case for joint liability or something to at least get the broker off the carrier's back. I'm concerned in these types of cases where if a broker is unable to be satisfied through the normal claims process, that they then take it out on the carrier themselves by damaging their business. I'm not saying that all brokers who file freight guards for unresolved claims do this, but the potential for a broker to exploit the carrier 411 process and file a freight guard in this case, it sure as hell looks like they're trying to force the carrier to come and make an independent decision in order to save their business. We don't have any real details beyond what I've already shared in this particular case. I'm sure it's going to take another week or so for me to get down to the bottom of it and figure out exactly what happened. But um, at least for the time being, we have the freight guard down, carriers able to continue to operate, and that opens up the door for honest negotiations, which is really what you want to do. We mentioned before today, it's about communication. And even when we're trying to resolve claims, uh, again, it's all about the communication. It's whenever the broker feels like the carrier is not willing to communicate anymore, that's when the freight guards start flying out, or the carrier communicates uh, unprofessionally. Now, that hits another rub. I don't know how many times I've had a broker cuss me out, and I don't appreciate it, but I got a thick skin. I take it on the chin and say, hey, I'm sorry you feel that way. Thank you very much, sir. Have a nice day. Always, please, thank you, sir, ma'am, all that good stuff. Um, Staying professional keeps you above the fray and most likely will keep you away from getting a freight guard. You stoop to their level, you start cussing them out right back, man, you're on a one-way street to another freight guard. And that is very hard to fight sometimes. And sometimes you have to sit with that freight guard for a couple of weeks before passions calm down enough for everyone to stop, take a look, and reassess the situation. Um, the entire freight guard process is supposed to be a corrective action tool. It's supposed to be a force to help drive change with the carrier and in the industry. Um, yeah, brokers want to make sure that other brokers know what they're getting involved with when dealing with certain carriers. Like, for example, if they double brokered a load, of course, keep that out there forever. The community needs to know that. I understand that. But when, if you make the equivalency of a freight guard being a murder charge, you know, failing to pick up a cargo one time, that's more like a speeding ticket compared to a murder charge. Is that something that needs to stay on the carrier's record forever? This is why we fight a lot of these different freight guards that are out there. They're either old and outdated and need to go away so the carrier can get on with their lives, or it's been improperly applied. And in most cases, it's not an act of vengeance. Most. Okay, there are bad brokers out there who will use that as vengeance. Um, but I don't know. Sometimes, though, trying to use a freight guard as a means to force a carrier to do something like in this claim situation, I don't know. It gives me a bad taste in my mouth. What do you think, Jen?
I agree wholeheartedly. A couple of things I wanted to say is making sure that the claim against the carrier comes from the shipper, not the broker. The broker doesn't place the claim with the carrier, the shipper does. So whenever you get a cargo claim placed on you, they have 9 months from the date of delivery to put a claim on you for that load, and it should come from the shipper, not from the broker. Also, I'm encouraging John to reach out for the 371.3 transparency on this to see if the broker was damaged on this. If the shipper offset some monies with the broker due to this claim, then the broker has the right to pass on that discount to the carrier, meaning the carrier would have to resend some of that money back to the broker to help because that would make everybody whole. Like he can't pay more than what. So, if the shipper took money away from the line haul because of the damage, then the broker can pass that damage on to the carrier. So that's just a thing to note there. And I would say, okay, well, that could be true too. Um, but making sure that definitely that it, like I said, that it's coming from the shipper, making sure that they have pictures and um, proof of this. I mean, you can't just offload something and go stick it in your inventory rack for 8.5 months and then pull it out and say, "Oh, gee, it's damaged. It must be the carrier that did this." And it could have been a forklift that did it when they put it in your inventory rack. It could have been a forklift putting the next thing in the inventory rack next to it, damaging it. I don't know, but you know, if there's no proof of it, how do you claim it on me? If it asks to have, I had a situation where I had a carrier pick up something and it was a shipper, no, it was carrier no touch, and the shipper sealed the load. So the carrier didn't even have an opportunity to look at it, do anything with it. It got there and it was some kind of paint table or something like that, and so it had different wells on it that had we call different colors of paint, and then and it was on this kind of flimsy wheeled cart, so to speak. And they put it on there and they didn't brace the load in any kind of way. And when the carrier delivered it, it had rolled to one side of the truck and then flopped over on its side. And they want the carrier to pay for that. But it was a carrier no touch. They weren't even allowed to be back there when they sealed it. He didn't know what was back there in this trailer. I mean, they could have put, three small children back there or whatever. I don't know, but I mean, he had no idea it was, and so therefore, how do you hold the carrier liable when you don't give him an opportunity to brace the merchandise or tell them, hey, if you put that like that, it's going to roll to this side or that side is. And take it and have an opportunity to be damaged. And so, oftentimes when you ask the carrier for information on how to load the load or how to brace it, they're going to have information that's going to be extremely helpful. So even though it might be carrier no or driver no touch, having the shipper to seal that load without any input from that driver could be detrimental to the cargo. So
When I drove, anytime that a shipper sealed a cargo without me having the chance to look at it, I broke the seal. I pulled 5 feet away from the dock. I said, "Hey, wait here for a second, guys," and I broke the seal. So give me another seal, please. And write the new number down on the BOL. I just want to make sure it's all secure. And I had them freaking watch me. I don't. I run warehouses for years out in Savannah, Georgia. We've handled all different kinds of cargo. I've been a stevedore and I've done all different kinds of rigging. Um, I know how to secure cargo of any kind. And if I'm not satisfied with how it's secured in my truck, I sure as hell do not want to be blamed when something goes wrong. So damn it, I'm getting in the back of the truck and I'm going to make sure it's properly freaking secured. Okay, it may be no touch, and they may have gone and sealed it, but uh, right, wrong, or indifferent, the first blame is going to come to the driver.
and
It
because once
always
the
happens that
driver
way.
leaves the yard with it, they're responsible for that load ultimately.
Absolutely.
That's what they always revert back to is, well, once they left the yard with it, they took control of that load. It's on them. Well, if you don't give me the opportunity to brace it properly, how can you put it all on me? Now, in this situation, John had a flatbed. Flatbeds are unique with a lot of different things. They have, extra components that can hang off a little bit, that can hang off the end or hang over the nose or um have to have certain number of tie downs or certain number of corner covers, or I mean they have all kinds of restrictions
Oh
on
yeah.
these flatbed loads. And so it's very important, especially when you're loading any kind of equipment or pieces of merchandise that are large scale like that, that you have to tie down, that you take pictures of it before and after it gets loaded. Because I had a situation where a piece of machinery was loaded at a shipper, and when it got delivered, the screen on it was cracked, and it was an older piece of machinery. So they said, "Hey, we it's going to cost as much to have the screen replaced." They were like, "That's not on us. It was like this when we put it on there and tarped it, and we delivered it. All you have is that once it got delivered and it's offloaded, now you have a picture of a cracked screen, but it doesn't show it when it was still when they were still on the trailer before they took it off the trailer. Like, get up there on the trailer and take a picture of that merchandise before they unload it, so they can see it's still, we're at the receiver, we're still on the trailer, it's unstrapped, it's looking like this. Wherever, however you can get a picture of that stuff, it's a picture is worth 1,000 words in flatbed
It
world.
may be. annoying as hell. And trust me, the extra 5 minutes that it takes to take a couple of pictures and send an email with it or whatever, it, yes, can be annoying. You just want to get on the road and keep going because 9 times out of 10, or even more, you don't have an issue.
But
But the
also
one
in
time you don't do it is the time you got an issue, and that
right.
video would have saved your life.
And also in the loading of your cargo, it's very important with flatbeds that they load it to DOT compliance. I know a lot of times they stack things, and those stacks are supposed to be pushed together or braced at certain. If you don't have that stuff, if that, I had a carrier that was like, no, I'm not taking this on the road. It's not pushed together, and if it's not pushed together, and it's an opportunity for it to shift. If it shifts when I'm on the road and it causes damage on the roadway or even death to another driver because my load shifted, that's going to be on me, and I'm not leaving here with it like this. I mean, they unloaded this carrier and sent him on his way and didn't give him any compensation for the entire day that they held him up there because he asked for them to load it to DOT compliance. So I went back to that broker and said, so what you're telling me is you would want the world to know that I, this broker, would want would rather that you take an unsafe load to the road than to make me fix my load. Well, they were like, "No, that's not our position." I said, "That's what you're saying because the only option you gave him was take it and go or unloading him and sending him on his way." So what are you sending out there to the world except that, hey, if I don't have this, if I ask you to load it correctly to DOT compliance by pushing these stacks together or bracing them properly or whatever, and you unload me and give me no tone, no compensation or whatever for my day, then you would rather me take an unsafe load to the road than to just go ahead and make those changes as I've asked them because it's what DOT compliance expects. So don't hesitate to stand your ground on that stuff. It's very important. It's a safety issue, and safety comes first and foremost above everything else on the roadway. So
Even at the warehouse, if it's not loaded the way you want it loaded to be safe, you have the right to instruct the warehouse crew to reload it properly. Okay, it is your right because you are the one that's stuck with what essentially turns into a bomb. Because at some point, if it's not loaded right, it could shift, it could then tip your trailer over, it can crush people. There is a massive amount of liability that's involved here. Most warehouse people understand this. Most warehouse people are professional and will do it the way you need it done. But if you're not looking at your load and you're not verifying securement and you're not doing any of that, it's a wild card. Yes, most of the time you're not going to have a problem. But that one time, what happens if you end up taking somebody's life in the process? It's not, to me, it's not worth living. I couldn't handle it. So I would much rather piss off a warehouse guy by pulling up, making him go get another damn seal and watch me resecure the load than to have to get stuck in a situation where I got to go to some guy's funeral.
absolutely. All right. Caitlin, anything you have to add on to this one?
Not particularly. This is more of a you guys thing. This isn't so much of a my expertise.
Right, just asking if you had anything that's come up in your dispatching where you've had to notify, like, hey, I need this kit, my driver needs it to be readjusted or whatever.
I haven't had any recent incidents. Cross my fingers. So
Knock on wood.
yeah, I'm sure it'll happen.
All right. And I think John has another thing he wants to talk about with. Were you done with the freight guard thing? Are we ready for the
Yeah,
Amazon
yeah,
thing?
yeah, yeah. I'm done on the freight guard thing.
The Amazon load.
Oh, yes, the Amazon load. For those of you who've been watching over the last few weeks, you've heard me talk about this Amazon case that I've been working on now for it's going on 4 months.
Yeah, we've heard about it for a long time, John.
Stolen cargo, or at least it appeared to be a stolen cargo, stolen out of Wisconsin, wound up in Joliet, Illinois, and bound for California. And cargo was identified as being a problem once the carrier got to Phoenix. Carrier then put it in storage and has been waiting ever since for somebody to tell her what to do and how to handle it because there was no guarantee of getting paid and there was no frankly, no one knew what the hell was going on.
And just
So,
side note, just to reiterate, the only time that you can hold a load hostage like this is if you have a reasonable expectation that you are not going to be paid for the load. Okay, you cannot hold cargo hostage as a general practice because you want more money, because you don't like what's going on your load, because it smells bad. I don't know, whatever. You have to have a reasonable, and a reasonable means they've said, "Well, I'm not paying you for this," or that's
or
not
you
what I
don't have a
contracted you
valid,
for.
or you don't have a valid rate confirmation.
Yeah, sorry, you don't have a valid
If
rate
you have a
confirmation.
valid rate confirmation, whether you're happy with the rate or not, you are still obligated to deliver that
And as long as they have
without
not
delay.
told you, I'm not paying you for this, or we don't agree to that, or if you don't deliver by a certain time, I'm not paying you, or something like that, then you have to deliver the load, and you have to accept the rate that's there. And so this is a unique instance where, um, with John, that they were allowed to hold this load in storage.
hmm So this load's been in storage for 4 months now. About 3 weeks ago, we reached a preliminary agreement, and there are some things that we're still getting corrected, which is actually altering Amazon's boilerplate language, and we're being successful in altering it. So that's a good thing. Um, Today, the carrier had a representative show up on site and inspect the entire cargo from start to finish. One of the things that everyone's concerned about is this all Amazon cargo? Because again, the assumption that we've been going by is somehow this cargo went from Wisconsin to Joliet, Illinois, and no one knows how the hell it got there. It wasn't supposed to go to Joliet. So the assumption was that it was a stolen cargo. So we wanted to make sure that everything in that trailer actually belonged to Amazon, because if it didn't, then there are other beneficial cargo owners that we need to start getting a hold of and try to determine disposition of the rest of this cargo. So we got an actually it was the carrier's insurance company who hired a independent um, adjuster, an IA, to go and inspect the cargo. That inspection happened today. I've already seen the preliminary photographs. Every single thing on that load actually does go to an Amazon facility. There are actually two facilities it's going to. Two pallets are going to Kansas City, and I think that's probably a misload, and the rest is going to Southern California. But at least now knowing that all that cargo belongs to Amazon, even though we don't have a packing list, um, we now feel reasonably sure that we're not taking stolen cargo and passing it on to somebody, which could potentially be a crime. So there is some satisfaction there. Now, this was done with the coordination of Amazon's attorneys. So Amazon knows that we have done this. JB Hunt, whose equipment the cargo is sitting in, they know we did this. Everyone is in the know on this, and now that we finally got this all figured out that it is in fact all Amazon, now the carrier is about to accept the agreement and finally deliver it so that they can finally get paid after all of this time. Um, there were some special exemptions that had to be negotiated. The 4 months of storage, that is a massive bill. Amazon only wanted to pay 30% of that. We did get them to finally pay all of it. Um, the Amazon is paying 50% of the line haul that the carrier was expecting. It happened to be a little bit more than the line haul they originally paid, but that was again the result of extensive negotiation that brought us to that point. Amazon doesn't typically lean towards the carrier in these types of cases. And Jen can tell you, she's worked plenty of them. This is kind of an outlier. We got a lot of concessions out of Amazon, out of this cargo, and that was because the cargo was well protected. It was protected in retail form, so it can be immediately put to retail sale. The cargo was properly documented in going into storage. There was constant communication among all parties involved, even though Amazon never really got engaged until 2 months in at a minimum. There was still constant communication among all parties involved, and that really helped to facilitate a minimization of damage. JB Hunt, for example, they've had a piece of equipment that's been out of service for 4 months. Normally, they are charging out the tail for a piece of equipment that's not being utilized the way it's supposed to be utilized. In this particular case, because we've been in communication with JB Hunt for so long, JB Hunt is not charging anyone any storage on this trailer at all, which is absolutely amazing. So normally you don't hear of someone from NOAA saying good things about JB Hunt, especially since we have them on on our boycott list. But in this particular case, the loss prevention guys at JB Hunt have been exceedingly helpful in being patient and going through this process with us. And they'll be getting their trailer back. It looks like next week, all that will finally be delivered. In this case, will finally be put to bed. What a torturous 4 months. I do not get paid enough for this. But I'm just happy that it
Amen.
is going to be over.
Amen. Amen.
You know, Jen and I both, we both deal with freight guards. We both deal with all kinds of fraud that takes place in this industry. And we work either off percentages or we have certain fees that we charge, etc., for these things. And yes, we even charge members for these fees because it takes a lot of time and attention and
Well,
professional
and
talent
even for me,
to deal with these.
as I work at a collections agency, obviously, and so my job is the sales side of things. And when I work freight guards, it's a special service that I offer for transportation clients. It's not anything that my collectors handle. You would not want my collectors handling this. They would not handle it well because their job is normally to rip off the heads and poop down the throats of the people that they're out there, you know, trying to get the money from. Like, you owe money, pay it. Why are you being such a deadbeat? Pay your bills. You don't want somebody trying to negotiate on your behalf that's that obnoxious about it because they're not. A lot of times it takes a lot of consideration. It takes a lot of love language. It takes a special, flowery, hey, what do we need to do to work together to make this right? Even if it means you're biting the inside of your cheek while you're saying it because I know I'm not wrong. Sometimes you get more flies with honey than you do vinegar.
Jen and I, when we go to send some of our masterpiece works of wordsmithing in dealing with some of these, we do bounce them off of each other. Because we're both very talented writers when it comes to dealing with these things. But having to walk that line in trying to be forceful and to impose what it is you're trying to do against somebody's own personal judgment and get them to see your way, it takes a great deal of skill, and the words that you use, uh, they have such power in trying to make that happen. And if I'm not really on my game that day, well, Jennifer backs me up, and vice versa. And there have been times where
And
I'm talking.
our love language is totally different too.
Absolutely.
We are both very convincing, but I'm more of a tug on the heartstrings, and if this were you, how would you feel kind of person. And John is a more technical, um um aesthetic kind of person that takes things in a very logical step by step manner, where I more go by the um I don't know how you would describe the difference really, John. Yours is more technical and mine is more emotional.
I think that is 100% perfect. Okay, and there are cases when the emotional is going to be more effective than the technical, and we've come across that in our dealings, working with each other. And there are times that we actually merge cases together between our departments, and then we work together to try to get these things resolved. And in the few times that we've have done that, we've been very successful
Hmm.
in making those things happen. Um,
Hmm.
the amount of work that we put into this is nowhere near it exceeds the value of what we actually charge for these kinds of things. We know attorneys who would charge $1,000, $2,000 plus, and there's no guarantee of success. Um, and we charge only $500 to get a freight guard taken care of.
Well, and I will
Sometimes a
say, let
little
me
bit
preface
more,
that by saying
depending on
it
how difficult
starts
it
at
is.
500, but you're right.
Yeah.
Some every once in a while we do have to go a little bit higher, and we let people know that well in advance of it getting to that. Hey, this is taking a lot of back and forth. It's taking a lot of resolution here. We've had to really work a lot of magic, and put you on a copy to blind copy to some of that, so you can see the amount of emails going back and forth, and the arguments that we're having to provide to get these freight guards removed.
See, neither one of us are attorneys, but we have to do a lot of research in specific situations. We do study case law. We do try to determine what our best options are, and, and try to show brokers that, hey, if this thing ever actually had to go to court, we're all going to have a lot of problems. It's going to be way too expensive. Why don't we just go ahead and resolve this just among us? Let's save ourselves the expense and figure this out.
We also have to be versed in those laws and legalities that govern this industry, whether that's Title 49 or the Carmack Amendment or the Universal Bill of Lading Law or MAP 21. All these things go into play when you're looking at whether it's a claim, whether it's a freight guard for whatever. There are different languages in different situations. Sometimes it is case law supported by these agreements, amendments, and acts that make it so. So there's a lot of things that go into it, but John and I, yeah, we are very complimentary of each other. We don't step on each other's toes at all. I don't think we've ever had really any conflict like, no, this is mine, no, it's mine.
Nope.
Because I mean, I've had people that don't want to work with me because I'm female. I mean, they're just chauvinistic, and it's
Oh
it's a
God.
man's industry, and they're very chauvinistic. And let me tell you, I had to have John step in because I knew this guy was not going to listen to anything I had to say because I was just some dumb broad that he was working with out there. Okay. So, I mean, and then I've had John come across very technical and dry, just do, 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 do. And I say, look, now, if this were your asset based side and this were happening with you, and how would you have them handle that? Like, what else could they possibly do that they haven't done? I mean, and that's worked very well too. So, we like to tag team these things because if I'm not able to get it for whatever reason, John may have another way to explain it to come across to be able to, hey, clean up hit this one, or I come in behind him and clean up hit that. We were just discussing the cargo claim thing before the show, and I was outlining some things for
Mhm.
him because he's just got bare bones details. And I said, well, here's some things to be looking for as you get your information in, so that you know if this will help shelter your carrier or not. So, anyways, that's what I was going to say about that, I guess.
We're not perfect, but we are extremely effective in what we've been doing. Jen's been extremely effective in doing collections. I learned a ton from her in that, to the point now where some of my freight guard and
Hmm.
double broker clients who end up saying, "Hey, man, this load was double brokered and I never got paid for it." I can usually take those on now and deal with those to the point where carriers are getting paid. Not to take anything from Jen, but I also know
No,
Jen's plate's overflowing with stuff because not only is she dealing with NOAA work, she has her own job that she has to deal
my
with.
own book of business that I
What
brought
most
with
people
me.
don't realize, from what most people don't realize, that most of us in NOAA have full-time jobs other than NOAA, and we have our own contractual obligations and our own responsibilities that we're all dealing with. So, NOAA is still a full-time thing for us. We basically have two full-time jobs, but we don't get paid by NOAA. And I know this blows a lot of people's minds. We do not get a check from NOAA. It does not happen. NOAA dues go to pay for NOAA's advocacy in dealing with all the stuff that we do in
The
Washington when it
transparency,
comes
the
to
speed limiters, the work
yes,
for paid for all hours worked, yeah, whatever we've got for all that stuff. But
the facilities infrastructure, like the website and all of this, that's actually paid for by our president. He actually pays that stuff out of pocket. Um, we're none of us are in this to get rich. We're in this to help improve the industry. We're in this to help improve the lives of owner operators and small carriers everywhere.
and
Um,
I think that's what honestly helped me with my carrier. I was speaking about earlier in the show is that when I was speaking to brokers, I said, look, what I do with Noah, because this wasn't even a Noah client, I said, we're just out here trying to make the industry better for all parties. like Mike has said many times, this didn't start out as being against brokers. It started out actually being against bad carriers hiring drivers that were to lease on with them, not following their contracts, not paying people, et cetera, et cetera. And it developed into the boycott because of the bad practices we saw from those brokers. So it's all, and now, right now, our focus is on insurance companies,
Hmm.
and the rape and pillage that they have done to this industry. So we're just trying to make this um, a workable, profitable industry for all parties that are involved. Nobody
If
wants to
anyone
work
ever
for free.
says that we're against brokers, we're not against brokers. In fact, there are quite a few brokers that we like dealing with. There are brokers that we've had on our show, and I'm sure we will have more brokers on our show in the future. Um, the, 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 we are here to help the industry as a whole. Yes, we advocate for carriers as much as humanly possible. But in that advocacy, we also sometimes need to advocate for brokers. If a carrier is doing something wrong, then we educate the carriers. The broker gives us that chance, and that's an important thing for us. We are an education tool for new carriers. We're a tool to
Resource.
assist, a resource for the for other carriers who've been around. We're a one-stop shop, and that's one of the best things about Noah. If you ever need anything for your trucking company, Noah's the place to be. You can get everything here. You can get compliance support here. You can get collection support here. You can get fraud prevention support here. You can get dispatch support here. You can get support for leases here. You can get support for pretty much absolutely anything you possibly need. So if you aren't already a member, I'm scrolling on the bottom of the screen here. Join us. TNOOA.com. It's not terribly expensive at all. It comes out to what, 42 bucks a month. It's
Like a dollar
125.
17 a day or something like that.
Yeah, it's not very expensive, and you have to think of it as an investment. Through Noah, you get access to all these different kinds of discounted services and items that you can get your hands on. Our fuel card is a very huge uh, uh, game changer in how much money it can save you. You
Say
can save
52% on tires.
you save 52% on tires through that card as well. I mean, our insurance division. Holy, I don't think I've ever seen anybody who has not saved money on our insurance division.
Not to mention, we have the new insurance division of NCIS, the NOAA Carrier Insurance Solutions, and we didn't mean for it to be NCIS, but just happened
We
that
are
way.
now we are now self-insured, baby. So that is a great perk. So please take advantage of these things while they're here. I know the last 10 minutes have been a big Noah ad, but it's important, and it's why we're here. We are very passionate about these kinds of things. Any
Caitlin?
final thoughts, Jen?
Well, we'll go around the room. Start with Caitlin. Any
Okay.
final thoughts? Anything you have for us before we wrap this up? I've got it on I have my alliance call to get on with our other a small trucking organizations that we align with to go for advocacy in Washington D.C. They've already started about 10 minutes ago, so I need to switch. Caitlin, last thoughts.
Nothing. Go ahead and switch.
All right, John.
No, I think I've had enough for today. Stay warm out there, guys. It's going to be a horribly cold week.
It is going to be horribly cold. Stay safe out there on the roads. Do your due diligence out there, and watching your weather ahead of time. Make sure you take all preventative measures that you need to in your appropriate areas. Um, until next time, it's been great. See you next
Take care,
week.
y'all.
Bye, guys.